Hi, welcome to the training webinar for this week. I'm Dale Franks. Before we begin, some administrative items. Because of the holiday on Tuesday, the Feature Spotlight webinar has been moved to next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, which is the third Tuesday of this month, we're going to have the Spotlight webinar there. So it's delayed for a week. And again, on the 27th, that Thursday is Thanksgiving, so that will be, what is this? It's the 13th, so that will be 2 weeks hence. There will be no training webinar for the Thanksgiving holiday as BP Logix takes Thursday and Friday off for Thanksgiving. So with that in mind, there are some weird changes to the schedule for this month. Also, we are nearing the end of the year for training webinars in any event. So in December, and I'd have to look at the calendar to see when we're going to go on our holiday hiatus, but our last webinar in December will be on Thursday, the 11th of December. And after that, the 18th and 25th, the 25th obviously being Christmas, we won't be here. We'll be taking those 2 weeks off. And of course, the 1st of January is also a Thursday. So obviously there'll be no webinar then. So from the 11th of December until the 8th of January of 2026, there won't be any webinars. So we'll be taking a 3-week hiatus at the end of the year. With all that in mind, we can now turn to what we're going to speak about this week. And this week, we are going to talk about metadata and how to set up, administer, and use metadata on your Process Director system. So when we talk about metadata, what are we talking about? Metadata is data about data. So we have a form, let's say, and that form has a lot of form data. And you'll have to excuse me for a moment because I've noticed that my glasses appear to be exceptionally dirty today, and I'm seeing lots of dust specks, so I'm going to need to clean them off. So when we talk about data, let's look at it this way. In a Process Director system, and in fact, let's look at a Process Director system. We have a couple of different ways of organizing things in Process Director. The first and most common way of organizing things is through files and folders. So in the content list, we have all of these different files and folders. And as we navigate to a file or a folder, we get to see the contents of that folder. So for example, if we're in the metadata folder and we're in our completed sample application, we can see the 2 knowledge views and the 2 forms, well, I guess 3 forms that are here in this particular knowledge view. Wait, no, it isn't. It's 2 forms, 2 knowledge views. Nope, 3 forms, a document library form, a grievance complaint form, and a leave request form. So one of the things that I can do in Process Director is I can search for objects that are inside a particular folder. So if I create a knowledge view and I want to use folder navigation, I can do that. And I can say, show me a knowledge view of all form instances that are in this folder. And so in my completed sample application folder, because I have 1, 2, 3 forms, just to confirm the number of forms, then I can return the form instances from all 3 of those forms. Now, that is useful, but if I also wanted to return a form from, let's say, the student exercise folder, where I have 3 similar forms, well, it's hard to do that. Now, I suppose I could go up to the metadata folder and say, show me everything that's in metadata, and then it would start in the metadata folder, and then I could navigate to completed sample application, or I could navigate to the student exercise folder, and I could see the various items there, but they wouldn't really be unified. Now, the second way that we can do it is through partitions. So I have this default partition here, which has all of my standard things that we usually see from week to week. But I also have a different folder that I use specifically for creating training courses. And I said folder, it's a partition. So I have a training courses partition. It's not related to the other partition. And of course, that's the downside of partitions. They're just not related to other partitions. I can't cross partitions ever and find information across multiple partitions. Metadata doesn't solve that problem, but within a partition, I can use metadata to unify things that are found in all sorts of different areas of the partition. For example, if we look in my archive folder, now this is the archive folder that contains all of the sample projects that I've ever given for a training webinar. I think I switched to this server during COVID, and as you can see, it goes all the way back to 2021. It may go all the way back to 2020, I think, but I may have updated it last in 2021 when I brought over all of the stuff from my old. I used to have a version of Process Director that was running locally on my machine. Stopped that whenever we closed down our office and everything had to be accessible online. So I switched over to this server in 2021. And I have all of these folders here. I've got all kinds of stuff in there. And of course, that's only inside the training webinar folder, because I've also got this documentation and training folder. I've got my Spotlight webinar folder, which contains all of the Spotlight webinar stuff that I've given since 2021. Well, it's either on this server or on the documentation server, because the documentation server is running a bleeding edge version. So my problem is, if I have all of these different things in all of these different folders, I have a partial solution if I want to create a knowledge view that returns some related objects, which is I can put them all in a single folder, which is okay, I guess. But in general, in Process Director, whenever we are creating applications, each application gets its own application folder that contains all of the forms and process timelines and business rules and other such objects that that application needs to run. And because they're all in their own folder, it becomes a little difficult to unify this information across all of these folders. What metadata provides is a means whereby I can take all of this information that are in completely unrelated folders. They can be anywhere in my system, and I can assign metadata to those objects, such as the forms, and then I can use that metadata in a knowledge view and pull all of the objects back that match the appropriate metadata that I'm looking for. So I can create relationships between objects that are, as far as the folder structure goes, they appear entirely unrelated, but I can relate them all, no matter where they exist inside the partition, by using metadata. So metadata gives me a system of organization outside of the traditional folder and file structure that I can create on basically an ad hoc basis if I want. Probably shouldn't do that, but I can create any organizational structure I want that is outside of the data. So I might have 5 or 10 different HR processes that are running, and I can assign HR metadata to them all. Or I can have a document library where I can assign metadata to each of these document forms and also to the documents that I upload into the system. And then I can return all of those documents, and I can organize documents by function or organize them by geographic location or whatever metadata I want to apply to give this organization scheme that appears just by having metadata that creates that scheme. So all of this content that I have that is all over my system in all sorts of different folders, I can now organize them and easily find them via a knowledge view because they now become assets that are all linked through this metadata. So what it gives me is this organizational method outside of the file and folder structure that I can just create to basically organize any data I want. I can organize forms or process timelines or email templates or document attachments. And I would assume that document attachments is probably the most frequent use for metadata, so that I can run a document library that assigns metadata to document attachments. And then through a knowledge view, I can just return all of those document attachments. In Process Director, metadata consists of two basic objects. The first object is the category objects. So I can assign a category to every document in the system or every object in the system. Every category can have an unlimited number of subcategories. So I can actually create a tree of all of the different categories and subcategories I want to use. And we'll take a look at that in just a second here. The second thing that metadata offers outside of the categories are attributes. Attributes are individual pieces of data that are applied at the category level. So I can not only have a category, but I can also have metadata fields that are applied to that category. And again, we'll see demonstrations of these fields and categories in just a few minutes. So the first thing that you have to think about whenever you're going to set up any sort of metadata system is that it is going to require additional management of your system. Because every time you create a new folder, especially if you have a comprehensive system of metadata, then every time you create a new folder, you're going to need to apply metadata to that folder so that all of the objects that you create in that folder inherit the metadata. If you forget to do that, then you're going to have to go back and apply the metadata later, and then you're going to have to replicate that metadata down. In that sense, metadata works much like permissions do, in that if I apply metadata on an object, all of the child objects will automatically inherit that metadata. And if I change the metadata later on, just like with permissions, I have a replication method to replicate that data down to that metadata rather down to all of the child objects in the folder. However, that requires some extra management, and you have to know when to apply metadata and when not to apply metadata. And you have to make the decision, am I going to apply some metadata to everything or just a discrete collection of things? And whatever system that you create is going to have to be managed. So metadata, first of all, does add to your ongoing system management burden in Process Director. I would say that it's probably worth the extra added burden because in most cases, the burden isn't too onerous. However, having said that, a badly designed metadata scheme is going to be much harder to manage than a well-designed scheme. And so if your metadata is, and I used the term previously, ad hoc, and then I immediately said, well, ad hoc probably isn't a great idea. With metadata, ad hoc really isn't a great idea. You do need to have a clear and logical system of organization to your metadata system, because number one, you want to be able to search metadata effectively, and a poorly organized metadata system limits your ability to do that, which means you're going to have content that you can't find or that you would expect to find, but it doesn't show up because your metadata is not organized in the way that you thought it was organized. Your metadata categories need to be fairly distinct and distinctive. So you should not have 5 different metadata categories called HR, because which HR metadata category are you looking for when you're building, say, a knowledge view? HR 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If they're all named HR, you're not going to know which one you're picking. And of course, that makes just the act of building a knowledge view much more difficult. So best practice would be to have distinctive names to prevent content from being lost, to make it easier for you to do searches. And of course, for your users, if they want to use metadata to try to find something in a knowledge view, it makes their lives harder too. So you have to be very organized in creating your metadata system. So we'll get to this in a few minutes. Let's look at metadata itself and how we create it, what categories and attributes are. To apply metadata to your system, first of all, you have to be a metadata administrator. If you're a system administrator, you're probably already a metadata administrator. However, if we go into user administration here, and I'm going to pick Barb, I think, and I'm not sure what permissions Barb has. As it turns out, not much. But if I make Barb a system, that's a system partition admin. Let's not do that. Let's make Barb a system administrator. And let's update her user profile. As a system administrator, you automatically get all of these subsidiary permissions, one of which is metadata admin. But let's say you're not a system administrator and you don't want to give general system administrator privileges to one of your developers. Well, you can set someone as a developer and, of course, give them user impersonation ability, and you can make them a metadata admin. You have to be either a metadata admin or a system administrator, which makes you automatically a metadata admin, in order to be able to access the metadata system and process director. If you are a metadata admin, then in the settings menu in the new UI, you will see the metadata administration menu. And if you don't see that, then you're not a metadata admin. But if you are, you will see it, and that will open up your main metadata administration screen. Well, it's not really the main metadata administration screen. It's really the partition selection screen for metadata. Because like everything else in Process Director, partitions are special and partitions don't talk to each other. And so in my case, since of all the partitions on this system, I have, with this particular login, given myself access to 2 different partitions. I have to select the partition in which I want to create the metadata. Now, we're going to be working in the default partition today because that's where all of my metadata examples and stuff exist. So I would select the default partition, or actually, since it is the default partition, it's the first partition that shows up, I wouldn't select anything. But if you have multiple partitions on your system, now I know most of you don't, and in most cases, multiple partitions are unnecessary. In my case, I have multiple partitions because I have training courses, and the training course sample projects are often based on training webinars that I've done. And so therefore, the objects are very similar. I want to keep my training courses completely separated off from all of the regular content that I create. So I've created a second partition. Now, what that means is that I have metadata for both partitions. Your metadata in both partitions could be quite different. In my case, that would be a bad thing. I would want to have the same partition metadata on both of my partitions. And in many cases, for those of you who have separate partitions, you may want to have your metadata the same on both partitions as well. It depends on what your partitions do. That would largely be up to you, but you have to choose a partition, and metadata can't be shared between partitions. So each partition gets its own metadata. Once you have selected the partition that you want, you can click on Metadata Administration, and that will open our Metadata Administration screen. So let's take a look at some metadata that we have here on our system. And I think I don't know how far down the structure goes, but I've got 3 levels of metadata for IT. So this is a policies metadata. So presumably any policy document that I upload to Process Director, it needs to have its own metadata. So if I'm uploading an IT document, it may be a development document, it may be an infrastructure document, or it may be a server administration document. So if I have a document on, how servers have to be administered, when we have to apply, Windows updates, or if I have an infrastructure policy, which might include things like how the network is organized and how AD runs and all of that other stuff. And then if I develop my own applications, I might have a development category. And it would govern how I develop applications, what my development application process looks like, what are the testing practices that we might want to implement in our organization. So it could be one of these 3 types of documents, and I would choose it. Let's say I chose server admin. Once I assign server admin as a policy document type to a document that I upload into the system, automatically it is an IT document because server admin is a child of IT, and IT is a child of policies. So if I assign server admin as my metadata category, I automatically assign all of its parent categories. So not only is it server admin, but it's an IT document and it's a policies document. Now in policies, I actually have HR and I've got ops as different document types. So in a knowledge view, I could search for policy documents and it would show me all of my HR or IT or ops documents. And if I only searched for IT, then it would show me all of my development, infrastructure, and server admin documents. And ultimately, if in a knowledge view I chose server admin, then it would only show me server admin documents. So even though I might have hundreds of policies that span various functions across my organization, all of these are policies. Now, I don't have any way on my folder side of organizing all of my policies. Now, I suppose I could. I suppose I could make a policies document and just have, or a policies application, and then just have everything go into that policies application. Okay, great. But now that I have 500 submissions of my policies application, how do I determine, even though they're all located in the same folder, how do I determine which document conforms to which policy category? Well, I can't unless I apply metadata to them. And the great thing about metadata is if I have this huge mass of data in a single folder, I can organize it with metadata. And if I have that same data distributed across 100 folders, I can still organize all of that data with metadata because the metadata provides this top level 30,000 foot system of organization that will enable me to basically take any object in the system and apply that metadata to it. And then I can search by metadata and I'll receive the appropriate documentation back. Let's take a look at a quick example. I'm probably not going to rebuild this example. I mean, I might, but I've built it like 4 or 5 times. We'll probably do something a little bit different here. But let's take a look at this completed sample application, which we have seen before. And I have several documents uploaded into the system. And I have several forms uploaded into the system, and I have these two knowledge view, the doc KView and the form KView. Let's just look at our doc KView for the moment. If we go to the Configure tab, I have a category navigation set up. And that category navigation uses my documents, uh, category inside the system. We've been looking at policies. The one we really should look at is documents. Let's go back real quick and look at that. So let's zip back to metadata administration, and let's look at, did I delete documents? Oh no. Training documents. Oh no, I didn't. There it is. I have documents, and I have two different types of documents, HR and IT. So if we go back to our knowledge view, which is our doc K view, and we're looking at documents as our category navigation. Notice in the knowledge view, when you go to the configure tab, you can have no navigation. You can have no navigation, but specify that you start in a specific folder. You can have your general folder navigation, or you can use category navigation. And since, well, I don't have my metadata organized into a single hierarchical tree. I have several distinct top-level nodes. That's probably not the best way of doing it, but if I use category navigation, I can choose the node at which I want to start. And this time I've chosen documents. And if we update and run our knowledge view, these are all of the documents that I have uploaded to the system. And I apparently have uploaded loss of mobile devices twice. All right, so let's go to HR. And which of these are HR documents? Well, expense reports. I'm not sure that that's HR, but that's what I uploaded it as. Grievance procedures and office safety. And if I look at my IT documents, well, then these are all marked with IT for some reason. Use of VPN connection, loss of mobile devices. Still not sure why all of these other documents are marked that way, but clearly that's what I did when I uploaded them. And I can go to my overall. So I've apparently applied IT to all of these documents. That's probably a mistake, and I would have to go back and fix that, but it's probably something I did in a previous webinar that I never undid for these documents. However, there are some documents that are only marked HR, and those are the documents that show up when I use my category navigation. So what I'm using here is my metadata category for documents in order to create this knowledge view that enables me to navigate through the documents node, which is very simple. It only has two subcategories, and find the different documents that match each of the categories. And here's the other cool thing about metadata. I can apply multiple categories to a document. It doesn't just have to be a single category. So if I apply for my filing expense reports, my grievance procedures, and my office safety, if I decide that these are not only HR documents, but that they are also IT documents, then when I do a search for IT, they also show up there. So the nice thing about metadata is I can apply multiple categories to the same object and have it show up at different places if I do a metadata search, which is essentially what a knowledge view with category navigation is. It's a search for matching categories. And so I can have the same document show up in multiple categories if I decide to assign it to multiple categories. This is something that I absolutely can't do using the traditional folder and file method of organization. If I place a form in a particular folder and all of its instances go in that particular folder, then they're all going to be in that particular folder. And I can't make them show up in other folders because they don't exist there in those other folders. But with metadata, I can, because metadata doesn't lock me into picking a single attribute for an object. It allows me to pick multiple attributes, or in this case, categories, for the same document. The second thing that we have to think about in terms of metadata, talked categories here, let's talk about attributes. So let's go back to my documents category. Now, in the training category, and let's expand this so that we can use it here. In my training category, I have documents, I have forms, and I have images. And whichever of these metadata that gets assigned to any particular object, whether it's forms, images, or documents, it will also be a training category document so that I can go all the way up my category tree to find specific documents. So I can find all of my training documents, as I said before, or just my specific documents, forms, and images. Now, for both documents and forms, I have attributes that are assigned. Attributes are data that apply to all objects in a specific category. So, for example, on my documents, most of them are policy documents. So I have an effective date category. So if I'm uploading a policy document, we're changing a policy or we're implementing a new policy, it generally has an effective date of when we're going to start enforcing that policy. And so all policy documents would need an effective date. I've also got keywords. Keywords is a really great attribute that I can apply because it's basically just random text. Whatever keywords I can think of to apply to a document, I can apply them. And the cool thing is I can now search for keywords and I can return all documents that match those keywords. So these are called attributes. They are data that is associated with a particular category. Now, if we go to forms, I don't have an effective date, but I do have a form type. And I've also got a release date for the form. So I've got two different attributes for my form. Now, as I mentioned earlier, whenever we're creating categories, we really do want to have our categories uniquely named. For example, something that I have not done, I have an HR category here, and I have an HR category up here. Largely, it's because I did them at different times for different purposes, and it was just simple to do it that way. However, in the real world, if I had both documents and policies, then what I would really need to do, instead of having two things named HR, because remember, HR is pretty common name and it is duplicated. I generally wouldn't want duplicate processes. Now, in my case, it's not a big deal because these are two entirely separate nodes. All of these nodes are down at the root of my metadata. And in a knowledge view, if I'm going to use category navigation, then in most cases, I'm going to pick a specific main category that I want to look for and just return all related documents in that category or its subcategory. So if I choose the policies category, HR will appear and it's not that big of a deal because it's not replicated inside this tiny node here. Similarly, if I go to training, I've only got one HR node and it's only there where I have HR. But if both of these nodes were part of a different parent node, then I would not want to name them both HR. In that case, because they all fall under the same node tree, I would probably want to call this HR policies and then call this one HR documents so that they had distinctive names so that whenever I was going through and even as an end user and I was looking for different items within that category tree, well, I would see the difference between HR documents and HR policies, and presumably that would have a specific meaning because they have distinctive names. That's a little bit of an aside, but to get back to attributes, here's the thing about attributes. They can be filled out in two ways. First of all, I can apply a form field and I can link it to an attribute, and the value of that form field will get saved as the value of that attribute. Now, attributes can be a little troubling because, again, let's go back and look at documents. In documents, I have an effective date and I have keywords. In HR and IT, I have no effective date and keywords. And the reason why they're here at the document level rather than down here at the lower level is because every IT document and every HR document is going to have an effective date. If I created an effective date attribute at the HR level and the IT level, A, they would both be named effective date, and B, they would be two different attributes. And so if I wanted to search for the effective date attribute, if they were applied here at this lower level, I couldn't do that. I mean, I could apply for the IT effective date attribute, and that would return me my IT documents. I could also do the same for HR, and that would return my HR documents. But what if I wanted to see all documents that had an effective date later than June the 1st, 2025? I can't do that in a single search. I would have to do two separate searches of that attribute, one for HR and one for IT. So I am placing the attribute at the documents level because that is the lowest level at which the effective date is a common attribute. Notice if I go up to training, that attribute doesn't exist. I don't have an effective date for training. I only have an effective date for documents. Because all of my documents have an effective date, then it's the document level at which I want to place the effective date. Same thing happens with keywords. All of my HR and IT documents are going to have keywords. So all of these subcategories, all of the documents in these subcategories are all going to share these same attributes. So I'm going to place those attributes at the documents level. And therefore, every document, whether it's HR or IT or whatever other category I decide to create below documents, they're all going to share the same attributes of effective date and keywords. So every time I upload a document, I can specify its effective date in a form field. And in another form field, I can just type in one or more keywords. I can separate them by commas, I suppose, if I want to. Or I can just have a new line for each word. I guess it doesn't matter how you fill it out as long as the keywords exist. And I can search on those individual keywords. And it's probably a big text box where I can put in 5, 10 different keywords for each one, but they will be shared across all of the items in the documents category. So again, if I want to search for all of my documents after June 1st, I now have an attribute that all of the documents share that I can have to return all the documents. Technically, I could say, look, I want to search for the HR category and all of the HR documents after June 1st, 2025. And I could only show my HR documents, and I can do that simply by using the category navigation and the effective date. I would actually have filters on the knowledge view to allow my users to search that attribute for those specific keywords. And I could use the same keyword and I can choose the documents level and see all of my documents, or I could choose the HR level and see just my HR documents. And I can do all of that in the same knowledge view. I don't have to perform separate searches. So the effective use of categories and attributes give me a great system to use for organization. Now, the way I have done this metadata is is probably not how you're going to want to do it on your system. On your system, if you're going to start creating metadata, you're probably going to want to have a single tree. I don't. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different trees of metadata built on this system. I have a weird system because I do all of these weird little unique and distinct things that all need to have their own separate metadata, at least for those that need metadata. And this system works for me, but my system is a huge oddball of a system. Yours isn't. So what you're probably going to want to create on your system, and this is going to require a fair amount of thinky pain so that you get this right, because it is something you do want to get right. You're probably going to want to have a single metadata tree that contains all of your metadata in most cases. Now, what that enables you to do is to basically look anywhere that you want in the same category tree to find information. Technically, what this would allow you to do is have your entire system be part of some metadata organization scheme, and you could have a single knowledge view that started at the top level of your metadata. So instead of having 7 here, you would only have 1, and then all of your subcategories would, and I don't have a lot of subcategories, but all of your subcategories would just be subcategories of a main category all the way up to the very top of the tree. And if you had a single tree of categories, then you could go and search each of those categories all the way up to the top. I mean, potentially you could return everything in the system. That probably wouldn't be all that useful to you, but it would enable you to set up a single category tree that contained everything that you want. Now, the downside to that is it does require, as I said earlier, a lot of thinky pain, because you have to figure out what that organizational structure is. You may want to have, instead of 1 big tree, or in my case, 7 tiny trees, you might want to have, 2 or 3 medium-sized trees, perhaps separated off by functional area, that would enable you to apply that metadata. As a practical matter, whether I have 1 main tree or 7 tiny trees doesn't matter, except insofar as creating a knowledge view like we looked at just a minute ago. I have to pick a category to use for navigation on the sidebar whenever my knowledge view runs. If you have a single tree, then it becomes a lot easier, and of course you have a much more useful and generalized knowledge view that can return any data from anywhere in your category tree, which is extraordinarily useful. However, you may have some things like HR. HR is always tricky, and who gets to see HR stuff is always tricky. So you might want to have a special HR tree that contains all of your possible HR stuff, and only HR people or senior managers and whoever have access to. So people who can see the various employee actions can get their own tree. So I might have an operations tree for all of my operational stuff. I might have an HR tree that is just specific to HR people. And so at that point, I have 2 medium-sized trees that I have to create, one for all of my non-HR stuff and one for all of my HR stuff. And of course, based on your organization, you may want to have different trees as well. For example, if you're a higher education institution, you might want to have, a tree for HR and a tree for faculty only stuff, and then maybe a tree for undergraduate student life, and then one for graduate student life, and it might not even be student life. You just might have an undergraduate tree and a graduate level tree, because those are really two different schools that do slightly different things. So, you might have 4 different category trees there for a normal system installation. Again, though, remember the cool thing about metadata is that, unlike folders, I don't just have to pick one metadata category and I have to be happy. For example, I can have something that I assign several different categories. And yes, I know I have a lot of IT and I didn't want to pick IT. I wanted to pick HR since that's what I picked up at the top. So technically, I could have all 4 of these categories assigned to a document or to a form. Again, they should not all be called HR. In a normal system, I'm going to have unique names, unique category names in the tree, or it's going to be super confusing. But again, on my system, these are actually 4 separate trees. So I can technically have 4 separate HRs. And if I choose, I can assign a document to all 4 of these categories, which, by the way, also assigns them to all of these categories as well. So if I chose any of these HR categories and I had a document that had that HR category assigned to it, it would show up. So I could have the same document that potentially could show up in 4 different searches, 3 that look for something called HR, 1 that looks for human resources. It wouldn't matter which one that I was searching for, because every one of those metadata categories could be applied to the document, because you can apply basically as many metadata categories to an object as you want. Now, it does get trickier here when we start adding in attributes, because each of these attributes are going to be different for each of the documents, and all of those attributes would need to exist. I'd need to have some way to apply them. We'll talk about applying attributes later. In most cases, we don't assign attributes across trees. We can, but as a practical matter, we generally would just assign a single attribute, and it would also check I'm sorry, not attribute, but category, and it would check all the categories all the way up to the very top of my category tree. So we can think of categories as well, that would be self-defining. We could think of categories as categories. So let's think of it in terms of books, right? I have a book, and this book is a science fiction book, Larry Niven's Ringworld. Okay, well, it might have a category of books, and there might be a subcategory of fiction, and then fiction might have a subcategory of science fiction, and every science fiction book will have those 3 categories: books, fiction, science fiction. Every science fiction book will share all of those categories. So the same category gets applied to multiple objects. However, each book is going to have unique attributes. For example, I need the publication date of Ringworld. I need the author of Ringworld, Larry Niven. The publisher of Ringworld, whoever publishes that particular book. It may be DAW, maybe Ace Science Fiction. It could be Baen Books for all I know, based on how licensees change, especially for older novels like that. Those are all only really applicable to that particular book, Ringworld. It has a name, Ringworld. That's a unique name. I don't think there's any other book named Ringworld. It has a unique author, Larry Niven. a unique publication date. Those are all unique attributes that apply to a single book. But that book will share, if we want to do The Mote in God's Eye, also by Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. Okay, fine. So I've got the name, The Mote in God's Eye. It's still book, fiction, science fiction. Categories are all the same. So Ringworld and Mote have both the same categories. They share those. Those are not unique attributes. But again, I now have a unique name, a unique author, or in this case, set of authors, because I have two authors, and unique publication dates, publisher, et cetera, et cetera. So the effective dates and keywords, similarly in this setup, are unique to a particular document. Now, will multiple documents have the same effective date? It's possible. I mean, it doesn't matter because each of the effective dates are applied to that specific document, just as each of the keywords apply to that specific document. Can some documents share keywords? Well, yeah, sure. Just as some books may share the same author. If I did a search for all of the books by Larry Niven, I would get a lot of books back, and they would all share the same attribute of author, Larry Niven, but of course, all of their publication dates would be different. Their publishers would probably be different based on when those different books were published. So some of the attributes might be the same, some of them might be different, but that set of attributes, the book name, the author, the publication date, the publisher, when taken together, those four attributes define a unique book, Ringworld, that is different than every other book that Larry Niven has written since the 1960s. And so that's how metadata administration works. Now, there are a couple of things we need to remember about metadata administration. And I know I have this in a later slide, but since we're here, let's talk about it here. And that is metadata export and import. When you have a set of metadata, you need to be sure that that metadata is the same across systems. This is true whether we're talking about moving from a development system to a production system. And it's true also if you have multiple partitions on your system. If I'm going to move objects that have metadata from one system to another, the metadata has to exist before I move any of those objects. So you can, in addition to creating your category tree here, you can also export your metadata categories. Now I had training selected, so I can actually export my training.xml node. Now, this will only export the training node. All of my other nodes will remain on this system. Because I have 7 root level nodes, if I want to replicate this metadata system on another system, so going from dev to stage and prod, or whether I'm just transferring between partitions, I'm going to have to do this 7 different times because this is only going to export the selected nodes. Although I think I can select all 7 and then hit export metadata categories, and it will export all 7 for me. But I have to export all 7 of them either separately, or I have to select all 7 of them to export them all at one time. Whereas if you have just a single metadata category that is just one big tree, then all you really have to do is select that category and then export metadata categories, and it will export everything. So you can always export to XML, and then of course to import, there is an import metadata categories. And just like with the content list, if I go to my root level and I import and I go and select my document, which I didn't export, so I don't have one yet, but if I imported my document, it would just overwrite any existing entries that had the same name, and it would just re-import that tree, and any new entries in that tree obviously would get imported as part of the metadata import in the system. So we can export between systems, and generally we have to ensure that our metadata is the same on both systems. So just be aware that there's a very simple metadata export and import. It exports it to XML. And also remember your import order if you need to import metadata. The metadata has to exist before you import any object definitions that refer to that metadata. And so generally, if you have a new application and you've created new metadata for it and probably a new workspace, let's say, for that particular data, well, you'd have to import the metadata first because it has to exist before you can import the objects. Because if it doesn't exist, when you import the object, you're going to get import errors that says, okay, well, this object is designed to apply metadata, say a folder. So there's data applied to this metadata, or there's metadata applied to this folder and all of its contents, but that metadata doesn't exist in your metadata schema, so you're going to get all these import errors. So you import the metadata first, then you would import the application itself. And if there was a workspace associated with that application, then you would finally import the workspace, because you can't import the workspace, especially if it refers to objects that are in your application. Those objects have to exist on your system before you can import a workspace that refers to them. So there is an import order to all of this stuff, and metadata is a top level object. So it's always the top level first import that you do whenever you import into a system. So now we have our metadata. We have our system all set up. Now, how do we use it? So let's go back to our webinar folder and let's look at the properties for this particular folder. So in the folder, there is a metadata tab. Now, I mentioned earlier that metadata exists. Now, I've already got metadata assigned. So I apparently forgot to delete that. So this is what it normally looks like when there's no metadata assigned. Now, I have three different ways of assigning metadata. So we will go back and now take a look at this slide. I can assign metadata to individual objects, which is probably the most common way to do it. There is less utility to assigning metadata to, business values and business rules and process timelines even. You're largely going to concentrate metadata on forms. Now, it doesn't hurt to apply metadata to all of those other objects. And in fact, in the larger scheme of things, it's probably going to be easier to manage, because while I can just go to a form and assign metadata to that form, just like any other object in Process Director, it's probably better off if I do assign metadata at the folder level. That way, once I assign it at the folder level, whatever object I build, it's the forms I'm primarily concerned about, but whatever forms I build, or even process timelines or any other object in that folder, will automatically inherit that metadata. Now, I suppose it's conceivable that I would want to have a knowledge view, especially if I'm an administrator or an implementer, and I want to see all of the business values that share a particular metadata category. That conceivably has some use in order to enable me to manage my system more effectively. So maybe folder assignment is best. Folder assignment doesn't solve all problems, though. At some point, you're going to need to assign things to individual instances, not so much for categories, but for attributes, yes. Because if I'm uploading a document, it has separate attributes from all of the other documents. And each instance, I'm going to need to supply the correct attribute. So in almost every case, I'm going to have to use one of these, or I'm going to have to use two, rather, of these three ways of applying metadata. If I'm applying metadata categories, I'm either going to apply it to a specific object like a form, most usually a form, or I'm going to apply it at the folder level so that everything that I create just inherits the metadata. So if I were to apply it simply to a form, then when that form creates a form instance, that instance inherits the metadata. If I upload documents to that form instance, they will inherit that metadata. So inheritance makes your life a lot easier. But the same thing is going to happen if I apply it to a folder. It's just going to go one step higher in the chain. Whether I do it on a form or whether I do it on a folder, I'm still going to use the metadata tab of the object. Attributes are going to be a little different. If you have attributes at all, you will almost invariably assign those attributes at the individual instance level, which means you're either going to have an attribute picker field, or you are going to need to just set a form field and link it to an attribute, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So for us, we'll just do it at the folder level because that is the easiest way to manage things for metadata at the folder level, much like permissions, which we also recommend that you apply at the folder level. It just makes your management burden for tracking permissions or metadata much easier. So if I want to assign metadata to this folder, I can just hit assign metadata and we'll assign training. And I guess, do we want to go ahead and assign documents? I forgot what I assigned. I think I assigned it documents. So we're not even going to check training. We're just going to check documents. And oh, well, what happens if I uncheck training? Documents gets unchecked. If I check training, I can apply that. But if I check a subcategory, as I noted earlier, all of my parent categories are going to be selected too. So if I select documents, then this folder now fits in the category of both training and documents. Now, for documents, I have two sublevels. I'm not going to choose either of those because those I'm going to choose at the instance level, because when I'm creating each of these objects, because it'll be a form that we'll create here real quickly, we'll kind of replicate what is in the sample project. So when I create the form, I don't know whether it is going to be an HR or an IT form. So I'm going to have to apply those categories at the individual instance level. But every form that I create will automatically be part of training and part of documents. It's just based on whether it's an HR or an IT form that determines how I'm going to set those fields whenever I create my form instance. And it's already 11:04. I'm not sure I'm going to create the form instances, but we'll at least look in detail at how the application is constructed. So fine, I have my settings that I want for my categories. Now, remember, I've got keywords and I've got effective date. Those are attributes. I'm going to have to apply those, just like whether it's HR or IT, whatever that category is. I'm going to have to assign those in the individual instances. Well, talk about that a little bit later. But for right now, let's take a look at this folder and how it's going to work. So Here's my folder. It's called, it's the webinar folder. I'm on the metadata tab. I've added training.documents and training as my two categories. So I am just going to hit OK. So now when I go back into this folder, I'm going to start creating new objects. So let's create a form definition. So create our form definition. We'll call this MD webinar, and we'll hit OK, and it will take us to the online form designer, and we can make whatever changes we want to make to the online form designer, which at this point is nothing, because we're far more interested in the form definition and going back to the metadata for that form definition. And on the metadata tab, we can see that when we created the form in the folder, it was training.documents and training as my two categories. That's great. Love it. Love the way this is working out. That's how inheritance works. This is what we would expect to see. Now, let's say I'll just go back up to webinar and decide, oh no, I've made a horrible mistake. I want to go back into the properties, back into its metadata, and I want to change the metadata. So let's say that I wanted to add forms, or let's say I wanted to add forms. I probably would not, but let's say I did. Okay, that's fine. It's not going to change training. It's not going to change documents. It is, however, going to add training.forms as a category up here. And that's fine. We're cool with that. But of course, now I have existing objects that exist, this MD webinar form. It already had its metadata assigned when it was created. Now I've changed the parent metadata. So just like with permissions, I can just go into my folder and I can say add metadata to all child items or replace metadata for all child items. These do two different things. In this particular instance, it doesn't, because all I've done is add a new category. So if I hit add metadata to all child items, then what it's going to do, or if I hit replace metadata for all child items, it's essentially going to do the same thing, because all three of these items are in the same tree. So they're all three categories. So if I replace the metadata, then it already has, the form already has documents and training as metadata. And so if I hit replace metadata, then it's going to replace documents with documents, training with training, and then it's going to add training forms. Now, because I've added this, I can just hit add metadata to all child items. And if I go back to my form now, and I've added that metadata, I can see that training.forms has been added to my form. But let's go back to my folder and we'll show the difference between replacing metadata for all of the child items. So let's go back to assign metadata, and I decide, you know what? I don't want to assign these. These aren't forms, these are policies. And so I need to make these part of the policies category. So we'll just hit OK here. Okay, now the categories are policies. Fine so far. What happens if I click add metadata to all child items? Let's click it. Okay, now we can look at the form. Okay, policies is there, but all of the old items are there too. So all of the training items, the three training categories that exist, they're all assigned too. So when I hit add metadata, it did exactly what I asked it to do. It added the policies metadata to the existing metadata categories that existed for this particular form definition. What I would want to do in that case, if I wanted to get rid of all of the training policies, is I would need to hit replace metadata for all child items. Then if I go back and look at my form, it has now replaced all of those old ones with the single policies that I have selected for webinar. Something else to notice, and this is going to be true universally, as I add categories, so we're going to change the metadata again. We are, in fact, going to go back to training, and we are going to pick documents, and we'll hit OK there. So let's look at our attributes. Now, because I've assigned the documents category, I have the keywords and the effective date attributes. If I go in and I assign forms, now I'm going to get the form type and release date attributes because all of these categories have been assigned to the form. Now, in most cases, I'm not going to edit the attributes here. However, I could edit the attributes here. I'm not sure how, with the way that I've got it set it up with effective dates and keywords and stuff, I'm not entirely sure that that would be helpful, but I could, in fact, apply all the attributes that I wanted at this level as well. And those attributes would also be inherited automatically by all of the child objects that would get created in this folder. So if we go back here to our MD webinar, I have hit the replace data at the folder level. So now I'm back to where I am, and all four of these attributes, because both forms and documents have their own unique attributes. In the real world, I wouldn't want both forms and documents set, but fine. We've done it, and now we're happy with how this is all set up. And that's how inheritance works. So now every time I create an object here, it's just going to inherit it. I am going to go back and change it because I want to remove that forms. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to hit that. And let's go back to assign metadata. Let's simplify this and just have documents. And we'll replace the metadata for all child items. And we're fine. So now let's go to our form. So on my form, I've got this metadata, and let's just build this out for a real quick demo. Let's add an attach objects. I don't have a process, so we'll just use the form here. So I've got my attach objects and then my show attached objects. And again, we'll just set this to form. Great. Let's save and close our form definition. So give it a second here to save. It looks like it has saved. We'll hit OK. And now we can run our form. And let's pick a document to upload. So let's go with desktop doc, and okay, here's a Word document, reference doc.docx, and we'll upload that and we'll submit our form. Great, cool. So now let's look at our form instances. So we'll go here and we'll get to properties on this form instance, and we'll look at its metadata. And what do you know? That form instance has metadata. And we can go look at attachments, and there's this reference document.docx. Let's look at its properties, and it too has metadata, and it too has inherited. So I can inherit all of these properties automatically simply on creation. So if all I'm worried about are are properties or categories, then I'm perfectly fine. It does get a little more complex from this point on. We've already talked about that. We've talked about that. I'm just using this to ensure that I'm not missing anything. I clearly have not been following the outline, or I haven't been using the outline, even though I have been following it. Okay. So we've manually applied some stuff to the metadata tab. That's great. So now let's talk about automated assignment via form fields. Let's go look at my forms, specifically my document library form. Let's go into the design view. So the whole purpose of this form is to create a little document library. So I'm going to upload a document. And again, it's all being assigned to the form itself. This is one of those very few and very rare instances where we assign objects to a form rather than to the process, because in this case, there is no process. So I give my document a name. Great. I upload the document so that it gets attached to the form. And then I have these three fields here: effective date, keywords, and category picker. Now, whenever we created our training and documents categories, in the document categories, we had two basic attributes: effective date and keywords. So on my form, I have the effective date field and the keywords field. Now, of course, I want to apply both of these fields to the various attributes that I have created in the system for those two properties. So if we go to the Field Properties tab of the effective date, there is this property right here called Link to Attribute. This is an object picker that, when clicked, will open up my metadata screen and will show me all of the attributes that I have created on the system. Unfortunately, for a previous webinar, I also I duplicated the training one and created effective dates and keywords. But notice the effective date is selected here. It has the little border around it. That is the attribute that I want to link to this particular field. So it is actually going to apply that attribute. Now, because of the way I have applied metadata at the folder level, it's automatically going to inherit the training and documents categories. But even if it didn't, if I set an attribute, and similarly, if we go to keywords, I've done the same thing for keywords. It's linked to an attribute as well. The attribute it's linked to is keywords. So both of these are linked. And as I was saying, even though this form automatically inherits the manually applied categories that we have at the folder level, even if that was not true, by specifying these specific attributes, I cannot apply an attribute unless I also apply the category. So by default, having the effective date and or keywords fields on this form, which are linked to the appropriate attributes, by setting those attributes, it will automatically apply the appropriate categories to the form. So my second method of applying those categories is simply right here by linking to attribute. That's why link to attribute exists. It automatically creates those categories. And so far, I'm a real happy camper. But I'm about to get a little more unhappy, unfortunately. because I need to specify whether each of these documents is an HR document or whether it's an IT document. In other words, I have another category that needs to be assigned. Now, categories are tricky. I don't have a link to category field. And even though I do have a control, it is called the category picker control. And you can find it in other input controls. There's a category picker. There's also an attribute picker. You don't use the attribute picker very much. It's far more common, probably 99%, to just use the link to attribute field in a form field to create the attribute value, which automatically creates the links that you need. So you very rarely use that. But category picker, that's the one that you got to use. Because my problem here with this category is getting me down to documents is good. Because for every document, I need to have an effective date. I need to have keywords. Great, that's now handled. But I have different types of documents. I've got HR documents and IT documents. I have to be able to pick which of those two categories it is. And so from other input controls, we'd grab the category picker, we drop it onto the form, and now I've got to do two things. Number one, obviously, I've got to give it a name. And second, I've got to specify the starting category, which means the top level category that I want to start reading through the tree to find the subcategories. We're already at the documents level of our category tree. We placed ourselves at the documents level as soon as we linked the attributes for effective date and keywords. Actually, we did it before that. We did it when we created the form definition because the documents category is set at the folder level. And when I created the form definition, it just automatically inherited those categories as we saw previously. So I now need to go a level or n number of levels deeper. So therefore, since I'm already at the documents level, I'm going to need to apply the documents category as the starting category for this category picker. What that does is it says, okay, forget all of the other attributes or categories that are above the documents level. We only want to see stuff at the documents level and below. So I want you to start off at documents. And in my case, I should only see two categories. It's going to be either the IT or the HR category for this category picker, and that will allow me to choose those two items. Now, in this particular case, I should probably uncheck this because this is what got me into trouble on the knowledge view we saw earlier, where I have the same documents as both HR and IT categories. If I select this button, it would allow me to place a document in both the HR and IT categories. In this particular use case, I wouldn't want that. I would want to assume that I am at either or at this case, so I'd probably uncheck that. So I'd still want to start at the documents level, but I wouldn't want to allow you to select multiple categories because I should really only have two choices, and it's an either or choice. It's either an HR document or an IT document. The trouble with setting a category with the category picker is that the category picker is going to store this data. So it's going to store basically the GUID of the whatever category I select, which is great, but it's not going to apply that category. So if you're going to use the category or the attribute picker, you're also going to need to run a custom task on your form. So if we go back to the document library form and go back to the custom task event mapping, my category picker is named cats because I was too lazy to write categories. Now, cats is a user picker, is a category picker, And since it's showing up here, I think we can assume that it is an event field. So whenever I select a category from the CATS category picker, I want to invoke the set metadata custom task. Indeed, I have to invoke the set metadata custom task. It's a very easy custom task to configure, and you only use it, of course, in context of creating metadata. And the very top, set metadata for items. Well, I only have a form and I only have form references, and I do want to set all of the object types. So both the form and the document attachment that I upload to the system, I want the set metadata custom task to set metadata for all of it. So actually, I probably shouldn't have form only checked. But the way this custom task works, having form only checked also enables me to check form references. I can do form only and not form references, which in this case would exclude documents. I don't want to do that, so I'll set that. The important thing about this is what categories do I want to add to the metadata? So I already have the categories for documents. Now I just need to add these additional categories. So it's either going to be HR or IT, because those are going to be my only two choices. And I just want to add that category to my metadata so that it adds that additional lower level category. I could remove categories as well. We're not doing that in this case. But we could do that. I can also do my attributes here. So I don't necessarily have to have my attributes linked to an attribute in the form. I can actually set my attributes right from the form using the set metadata custom task. So I could make it happen that way. I'm doing both so that no matter what I have done in the past, whatever the current value of the form is, when I change the category, that's also going to apply or reapply the effective date and keywords. This is the most common way of, well, if you're doing categories, you have to use the set metadata custom task. Because the category picker does not automatically assign the metadata. I'm not sure why it works that way, but that's how it works. So if I have a category picker or an attribute picker on my form, then I'm going to need to use the set metadata custom task to set my attributes and categories on the form instance itself. So I can have data for them on the form, but that data doesn't actually get applied as metadata. If I have a category or attribute picker, doesn't get applied as data until the set metadata custom task runs. So this is an extra little wrinkle. And even if we ignore attributes, if you are going to have to add or remove categories and you're doing it via the category picker, you're simply going to have to run the set metadata custom task. So this is an extra step that you have to think about whenever you are building your metadata setup. At what level am I going to apply the categories? In most cases, you're going to apply the categories appropriately, but the way that I have this set up, because I have the same form to upload both IT and HR documents, I'm going to have to set it at the form instance level because it's going to be different for each form instance. Now, I would not have to run the set metadata custom task at all if I had two document library forms. If I had an HR document form and an IT document form, then I could apply the HR or IT category at the form definition level. Then I wouldn't have to run any of this at all. They would just automatically have the right categories. Now, as far as the attributes go, I'd still need to use the link to attribute field or property of the effective date and keywords fields on the form. And that would be fine. Um, and my form would work and I would never need the set metadata custom task. In my case, I have to have it because I'm doing the categories on the form. So this has to run. And the way that I've set it to run is whenever I change the value of the category field. So basically, I'm building in the functionality that enables me when the form runs just to set the categories every time I change the value of the category field. So with that in mind, and I've learned a neat little trick here, things run a lot faster if you run them from the run menu than if you use the update and run menu inside the object definition. So for my category, okay, this is not working. It should start at documents. It is not starting at documents. So I am going to have to bring that up with engineering because I have set it up to start at documents, but that's fine. We'll go with IT as our category. Now it has set ID as our category. I've already got the 11/13/2025 set up as the effective date. I can have some keywords here. I guess I'm going to need, let's see, KW1 and KW2 and that's all I need. I'm KW1 and KW2 because I don't remember what any of the keywords are for any of my forms, but this will be a unique form. And I know that I haven't set KW1 or KW2 as a keyword for any of my forms. So again, yeah, IT. I guess I have to give it a name. So we'll call this new IT document for stuff. And I'll upload a document. So let's go to browse. And what is an IT document? I've got securing mobile devices. Let's try use of VPN connections. So we will upload that PDF file, use of VPN connections. There we go. Now I did things backwards. I didn't run the set metadata. I ran the set metadata before I uploaded the document. I should fill this document out top to bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch this to HR and HR and IT. Did I not save this? Maybe I didn't save it. Let's just set it to HR. No, it needs to be set to IT. IT. There we go. Okay. Now it's set right. I need to do this after I upload the document because I obviously want to apply this IT category to the document itself. And since my set metadata doesn't run unless I change the value of category, I have to go back and redo that after I uploaded the document. But that's fine. I've uploaded the document. I can go ahead and submit. So there's my document library form. I submitted it. We're good to go on that. And now I have two KViews. I have a form KView and I have a doc KView. So if we go and run, well, I guess we'll need to look at the form KView. Now, notice some things on this form KView. First of all, I am filling out nothing on the properties tab because I don't want to look for a specific form or a specific timeline or what have you. I want to use metadata to return my value. So I'm going to go to the Configure tab. I'm going to turn on category navigation, and I am going to choose Documents as the category that I want to start with. Now, as we saw previously, I'm only going to have two subcategories, HR and IT. But I've clearly done something I don't want to do. Well, I must have deselected documents. So I want to return category navigation with documents. Now, everything else is the same. Now, on this particular knowledge view, I just want to return form instances. We're fine. On my columns, I've got the normal columns here, so we're fine with that. I do have a filter. Keywords contains. We'll get to that in a second. So I do have my filter. And again, if I want to set up a filter on metadata, I can. I can set up a filter on either the category or the attribute. Now, in this particular case, all of my documents have a keywords attribute. So I am looking for the attribute where attribute keywords contains some sort of string. I've left the string blank and I've used contains so that when the knowledge view runs, it returns everything. And then I've clicked the prompt user when run checkbox. So this is a normal knowledge view in most respects. The only two real differences or three real differences between this and the normal knowledge view that you create in the system is that we haven't selected an object to associate with the knowledge view. And we have used category navigation so that we can navigate through all of the metadata categories that would apply to this specific form and all of its form instances. And then we have a filter that just happens to filter on the keywords for the document. What I should probably do, have I done this? I've done version. So hold on, let me do this. Metadata, attribute. We're going to change the value of, we're going to go with keywords because I'm not sure what keywords I have used or not. So we're going to change this to keywords. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing this for display purposes. And now we can update and run our knowledge view. And it's not returning my keywords. So KW1. Okay, well, it's not showing me my keywords, so I'm obviously doing something wrong. I was hoping to get a list of all of the keywords that have been assigned there. Maybe the easiest way of doing this, sorry, would be to go back here. In any event, it's new IT document for stuff. This is the form. There it is. We just created it. It's that use of VPN document. If I go back to my form KView, since I have a keywords field, it's not pulling the attributes back, but you know what it will pull back? It'll pull back the keywords form field. Oh no, I didn't select a form definition. Okay, we're gonna have to do this even differently. We're gonna have to go to value and string, and we're gonna have to trick the system since there is no form associated with this knowledge view. We are going to have to use the form field system variable for keywords to make this thing run. There's my keywords. So KW1 and KW2, it works. We saw it work. And what do we have? Injury. Let's search for injury. Office safety. That has those keywords. I've done something similar with another knowledge view. What time is it? It's 11:38. We are running out of time. So same knowledge view. The only difference here, and this is something we don't talk about much, but I don't have to return forms. I can return the actual documents that have been uploaded with all of these forms. This is my actual document library. It's not the forms, it's the documents. So I can just run this knowledge view. And again, I can have keyword contains, KW1, search. And there we go. Use of VPN connections. It returns my form. And I actually do want to go back here and make a change to this so I can see the keywords. I'm sure that I have shared keywords. So we'll go keywords. I know, why don't I just copy that And we'll go into our field. And once again, we'll go to value string and we will drop in the system variable for the keywords form field, update and run. And it's not going to work on this one because I'm returning documents, not form instances, so it doesn't know what the keywords field is. So that won't work here. We'll have to go back to the other to see if I can do what I wanted to do. All of this stuff has been assigned to HR. So here is my new one, my use of VPN connections. And so there were 3 here earlier when we looked at it earlier on in the webinar. Now there are 4 here because I uploaded that use of VPN connections.pdf. Also, because I kind of messed up all of these form instances by adding HR to them, now it's all kind of higgledy-piggledy. Let's go back to my form kview, update and run. And I don't think, so if I go to HR, I get all of those. I'm looking for something specific. I'm trying to find the same keyword in multiple forms, but you know what? It looks like everyone has unique keywords. So I can't do a keyword search to return multiple ones. Well, I guess I could. Well, I've got to separate the word somehow. So let's add keyword 1 to that. And we'll hit OK. That should save it. Now we can refresh our knowledge view. There, that one's KW1. So now if I do KW1 and I've done this right and I've picked the right form, I've got 2 documents that are KW1. And if I go to IT, KW1, I get both because this one is assigned to both categories. So let me try to fix that. Let's go to HR. Okay. Oh, but I did add category. You know what? I'm probably going to have to manually fix this. Hold on. We'll go back here. We'll go to the properties. We'll go to the metadata. And yes, we are going to have to make a change there. We are going to have to turn off HR on that one. And see, the nice thing is now I'm at the form instance level, and I can make these changes at the form instance level as well. So that's kind of cool. So when I go to IT, well, what is a non-IT? Use of VPN, office safety. That's an HR one, right? Yeah. So KW1, we'll hit OK. And by the way, I want you to notice all I did is change the field value and it's giving me my KW1 because of the linked attribute. It automatically does the link. So I don't need to run the custom task. That's why I didn't change the category picker and prompt the set metadata custom task. Don't need to because it is automatically assigned by having the linked attribute. This is HR training. So yeah, I do want to assign my metadata to this and documents, and we'll turn off IT on this one. And actually, I would want to replace metadata for all the child items. I didn't do that before, but now I have, so that my documents, the document attachments items are also changed. So now, and I dislike the fact that it reloads this all the time. So if I do a KW search here, I now get 3 forms. And if I go to HR and I go KW, I get 2 forms. And if I go to IT, well, I still haven't completely mixed it up. I still get 2 forms, but they are 2 different forms because there's my new mobile policy submitted on whatever date. So in any event, that's how we set up our metadata on the system, how we apply it, and of course, then again, how it gets set up on forms, and how we do all of the different updates. I think the rest of this I've already covered, so I don't need to cover that again. And plus, it is 11:46, so it is time for us to go. But that is metadata and how to set it up. There is, by the way, a metadata training course. So if you want to go to the training portal, you can take that metadata training course and learn how to set up metadata on your own. That's it for today. I'll be back on Tuesday for the Feature Spotlight webinar, and on Thursday, so it'll be a fuller week for our last training webinar in November. Have a great week and have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. So long.